Despite everything currently surrounding Andrew Tate, millions of young men still listen to him, defend him, and still see him as somebody who's worth following. Some people look at that loyalty and assume that those men must be either stupid or hateful or brainwashed in some way or another. But I think the real explanation goes much deeper than that. A lot of men online are not only looking for entertainment, they are looking for direction, they are looking for standards, they are looking for somebody to tell them what being a man is supposed to actually look like. And when the internet gives them a personality that gives a lost man confidence or purpose or some sense of identity, then that attachment can become incredibly powerful and real. Why do young men still follow Andrew Tate? And when does useful guidance turn into blind loyalty? I spoke yesterday about the Andrew and Tristan Tate's recent legal situation. The video is not another attempt to decide whether they are guilty or innocent, because ultimately I have no idea about their allegations or about their case or anything of the such. I've not seen all the evidence, and neither have most people arguing, with complete certainty on the internet. This video is about something broader. It is about why Andrew Tate became so influential in the first place and why so many men feel personally compelled to defend him. Because Andrew Tate is no longer just an individual who's online. To millions of people, he represents an entire idea of masculinity. And, once somebody becomes a part of identity, a part of your identity, it becomes very difficult to judge them objectively, And this happens the world over, whether it's, different role models in different areas or realms of the world. Once you become attached to the figure, objectively making a sound assessment of that figure becomes almost impossible. It's easy to mock young men for following figures like Andrew Tate, but very few people actually stop and ask why his message reached them so effectively in the first place. A lot of young men feel invisible. They do not feel particularly respected or attractive or capable, confident, successful, or important. They may be struggling socially. They may feel lost in work. They may have no clear purpose or direction. They may not have a strong relationship with their own father or any older man for that matter, giving them, genuine, solid guidance through life. And somebody appears online one day and says, stop feeling sorry for yourself, get into shape, make a whole bunch of cash, get confidence, build confidence, become competent, take responsibility for your own life. Do not accept weakness. And for somebody who's spent years feeling powerless, that message can feel completely transformative, because I totally understand why it works. Strength matters to me. Responsibilities matter to me. Discipline matters to me, as I'm sure they do you as well. Training, routine, and setting difficult goals and accomplishing them have helped me through some of the hardest and toughest periods of my own life. Sometimes a man genuinely does need to hear a powerful voice or a forceful voice telling him to stop wasting his potential. And the problem is not that young men want guidance. The problem begins when guidance becomes dependency. There is a vacuum which seems to be in play. A vacuum on the internet for young men wanting mentorship and guidance. A lot of businesses are built around this idea. A lot of things, you'll be scrolling on Instagram and you can become a mentoree of this, whether it's trading, whether it's fitness, whether it's online coaching, whatever it is. There seems to be, mentorship, and it's a big sort of online business. There is a vacuum for it. Traditionally, young men received direction from people who actually knew them, whether it's fathers, grandfathers, coaches, teachers, experienced men at work, local communities. Those people could see the young man's actual life. They could understand his strengths, his weaknesses, his temperament, and his circumstances. An internet personality cannot do that. They will not do that. They are speaking to millions of people at once. They do not know who is listening. They do not know whether their advice is appropriate for that person's life. They're casting a huge net, and whoever falls into it, that's what happens. Ultimately, the viewer can spend hours listening to them. The relationship starts to feel personal. The viewer knows the influencer's story. He knows his routines, opinions, relationships, enemies, ambitions, but the influencer does not know the viewer even exists. Feels like mentorship, but it's just a one-sided relationship. Whereas traditionally, mentorship is a symbiotic relationship between the mentee and the mentor. How does inspiration become identity? This normally happens gradually, you know. First, you watch one video that genuinely may help you. Then you watch another, then you start following everything a person says. You begin using the same phrases, you adopt the same heroes, you adopt the same enemies, you even start to speak like that person. You start viewing every problem through the same framework. And eventually, that personality becomes connected to the version of yourself you are trying to become. You know, and that is why criticism of the role model figure can feel so personal. You know, when somebody says, "Oh, Andrew Tate might be wrong about this," then, you know, the follower does not always hear a simple criticism of Andrew Tate. The follower may say, "Oh, you know, this person gave you confidence. This person who gave you confidence or self-respect or got you into the gym is a fraud. You know, the beliefs that helped you are worthless. The identity you built is embarrassing." So instead of calmly considering the criticism, you know, the follower may become defensive, really defensive. You know, he's no longer protecting the argument, he is protecting himself. Blind loyalty is not strength. The irony is that many of these personalities promote independence, strength, and personal responsibility. But some followers become incapable of thinking independently about the person teaching those values. This happens the world over in multiple realms of life, as I've said before, regardless of which role model it is. It's not just Andrew Tate. You know, they defend every contradiction. They excuse every mistake. They repeat every explanation. Even if the explanation's wrong, they'll still repeat it and regurgitate. Anyone who disagrees must be weak, jealous, corrupt, or part of some humongous, large conspiracy. That is not independent thought or independent thinking. That is dependency disguised as strength. A genuinely strong man is capable of saying, well, some things this person has said may be useful or may have helped, but I do not agree with everything they say. Or I respect part of this message, but I do not know what happened behind closed doors. You know, you do not portray a mentor by thinking for yourself. You know, a worthwhile mentor should ultimately make you more independent over time, not more emotionally dependent on him. So, why does Andrew Tate remain so influential? Andrew Tate will probably remain influential regardless of what people say about him, because he understood something that many institutions ignored. A lot of men wanted somebody to speak directly to their ambition, anger, insecurity, and frustration. They did not want to be told only to become softer, quieter, or less threatening. They wanted to hear that strength could actually be useful, that confidence could be built, and confidence actually matters. You know, that their current circumstances do not define them, that they could become more capable. Those desires are not inherently dangerous. Wanting strength is not wrong, and wanting money is not automatically greed. Wanting respect is not automatically insecurity. Wanting to become more attractive, competent, confident is not something any man should ever be ashamed of. Somebody that can say things that can improve your life and still have serious flaws. You know, somebody can be correct about discipline and wrong about relationships, correct about confidence but wrong about morality, correct about personal responsibilities but maybe they're wrong about other people. And maturity means being able to separate the value of an idea from your loyalty to the person who's actually delivering the idea. You know, keep the lesson, question the teacher, and own the principle yourself. Judge advice by what it produces. You know, the best way to evaluate an internet mentor is not by how aggressively you defend him. Judge the advice by what it produces in your actual life. Are you becoming stronger? Are you more disciplined? Are you more financially responsible? You know, are you more emotionally controlled? Are you more honest? Are your relationships improving? Have you built better surroundings for yourself? Is your relationship with your family more useful, more symbiotic? Are you more capable of dealing with difficulty? You know, are you simply spending hours and hours watching videos, repeating slogans, arguing with strangers, and feeling superior to people online? You know, real self-improvement should eventually become visible in your life. It should change your behavior. It should improve your standards. It should make you more responsible. Watching powerful men online can make you temporarily feel powerful, but borrowed confidence disappears when the screen turns off. You know, the real test is whether you are building something of your own, essentially. Men need guidance. Fully understand that. Boys need guidance. So do women, but this is obviously aimed at boys and men. Men need standards. They need examples. They need older voices and strong communities that expect something from them. There is nothing weak or embarrassing about that. This is how things have happened for millennia. Internet personalities can sometimes provide the message that helps somebody finally feel like they're moving forward, but no internet personality should become the owner of your judgment. Absolutely, you should learn from people, allow people to challenge you, take the ideas that genuinely will improve your life, but never defend another man so blindly that you abandon your own principles. A good mentor should help you become your own man. He should not turn you into a permanent follower. Keep the lesson, question the teacher, and make the principle your own. This is Jake O'Neill Talks, honest commentary on modern life.